and welcome to another episode of Light in 10. Today, we're going to help you to transform your life by practicing better self control. Now, I am talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you because just a few weeks ago, I had my little struggle with losing my temper and just completely derailing a conversation and making things very uncomfortable for the people around me because I kind of lost it. I'm not proud to say it, but thank God for grace and the fact that God teaches us in His Word how we can better manage ourselves and thereby preserve the relationships around us. So the first thing I want to share with you is that in managing yourself and practicing better self-control, you have to acknowledge your shortfalls. So the first thing that we have to do is recognize that there are things in ourselves that we need to change. Just as how I had to take that step back and realize exactly what were the things in me that I would need to be in control of so that I could practice better self control. And Proverbs 25, verse 28 tells us that he that hath rule he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Now, can you imagine a city that is broken down? It has multiple points of entry, multiple points of vulnerabilities. Certainly for cities without walls, the enemy can come in at any time. So it's very important for us to acknowledge the shortfalls that we have in our character. And once we acknowledge it, it's much easier for us to work on that, to rebuild the walls that have been broken down, or to construct the walls that are absent. So that's the first tip. The second tip that I want to share with you is that you should be mindful of your triggers. What are those things that get you upset, that get you annoyed, that will allow you to lose your self-control? Is it the traffic in the mornings? Is it, people who don't exercise the same amount of urgency in certain situations as you? Is it people who are being slow, or business is slow? Is it people who are rude, etc.? What are these triggers that will cause you to lose your self-control? Once you recognize these triggers, it is much easier for you to manage it. And the first thing that we have to do in managing our trigger is to recognize that we can only control things that are actually within our circle of control. So we can't control morning traffic, but what we can do is control our reaction to the morning traffic. So for this, I turn to James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. Now, this is one of my husband's favorite scriptures. I mean, he's always repeating it to me. Don't know if that means anything. Yeah, so that is it. James 1, verses 19 and 20. Let's go. It says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." So James is counseling us to be quick to listen. And when we practice active listening, we're not listening to respond to what the person is saying. We're truly listening to hear what they're saying. We're listening to the emotions. We're listening to their words. And we are listening so that we can adequately contribute to their side of the conversation, not for our own selfish reasons. So when we are slow to listen, that means that the quick retort that we have sometimes is not necessary. As a matter of fact, James says that we should be slow to speak. So the quickness shouldn't be in our tongue, the quickness should be in our ears, right? And then it says you should be slow to anger. So the things that easily tick you off, we have to evaluate those things, and we need to slow down or reaction to things that make us angry. Is this really worth getting upset over? Because verse 20 says, the wrath of man or the anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. It's not Christian like. And so I discovered that in that moment, whatever Christian I said I wasn't exhibiting Christ or showing Christ in that situation. So we have to remember that our ability to control ourselves and to practice self-control actually shows people the God that we serve. And our final tip, of course, is exercise faith. Yes, I did say faith. Now, where does faith come in self-control? I didn't know it played a part, but my devotional has this way of just telling me things that speak to exactly what I'm going through at that particular point in time. And I think about last week, my devotional had this to say about self-control. It says, every time you allow your feelings to become irritated, you manifest in your words that you have not that faith that works by love and sanctifies the soul. Christians can maintain an untarnished reputation if they are Christians, which means Christ-like. So every time we allow ourselves to be irritated, we are not exhibiting that faith in God that He has promised to transform us and to change us and to help us to overcome these things. I mean, 1 Corinthians 10 verse 13 says that God has given us the power to overcome anything or any temptation, you know. So we are not taking God at His word, and we're certainly not exercising faith in God. So we look at 2 Peter 1 verses 3 to 11. I'm not necessarily going to read all of it, but I think you should read all of it just so you can understand how faith works in practicing self-control. So 2 Peter 1 verses 3 to 11 says, according as His divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness, through the knowledge of Him that hath called us to glory and virtue, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that you shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. So I'll stop at verse 8. But as you can see, practicing self-control is not just in a vacuum. When we walk in the knowledge of Christ, we keep adding things that we're learning. Through faith, we add virtue. Through virtue, we add patience and temperance and brotherly kindness. So are we even being kind to our brothers and sisters when we speak to them rashly, or when we respond to them in anger? Are we being loving when we get angry and upset over things that really and truly we can't control, and maybe the persons that we're getting upset with can't control either? So in practicing self-control, we have to remember that God has made us great and precious promises that He is able to keep us from falling, and we have to exercise that faith and know that today I might mess up, But because I believe that Christ has brought me this far and he's going to allow me to get over this hurdle and win this victory, then the next time I am going to put myself in a position where I am mindful about my shortcomings, I am mindful of my triggers, and also I can exercise that faith in God that is necessary to get me to be better self-controlled. So that's it for today. Join me next week for another Light in 10. Be blessed.